Welcome to Bovine Banter with the Penn State Extension Dairy Team. I'm Kasey Hower, and I'm a dairy educator based in Berks County, Pennsylvania. Joining us today are Kent, Kyle, and Chad Heffner with Jersey Acres Farms and Stone Mountain Wine Cellars, located just north of us in Schuylkill County, Pennsylvania. Jersey Acres Farms is a farm that has been in business for over a century and is currently run by the fourth and fifth generations. The Heffners milk around 200 Jersey cows, have a roadside stand selling seasonal produce, and operate a winery. They are here today to talk about their farm transition and how they diversified to keep their business going for future generations. So thank you for being with us today. And to get us started, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your background?
Hi, I'm Kent. I'm president of our corporation. It's a Subchapter S corporation. I'm a Penn State graduate. I majored in dairy production, and I oversee the dairy herd, and I also work quite a bit in the orchards as well.
I'm Kyle Heffner, Kent's son, also a Penn State graduate, majored in agricultural systems management, served on the Penn State tractor pulling team. I came home after college, take care of a lot of the equipment maintenance, field crop production, and I do a lot of work in the wine cellar.
I'm Chad Heffner, Kent's other son. I also graduated from Penn State, majored in animal science, minor in agribusiness management. My primary focus is on taking care of the calves and the young stock, the heifers, and I also do a lot of the vegetable and the garden work.
That's great. It's always nice to have some Penn State alum here on our podcast. But getting into the dairy side of your business, I'm just curious, what made you guys choose jerseys?
I asked my dad this question years ago, and his answer was a man a very long time ago started with jerseys, and I'm taking that to mean that was my grandfather. So it's my grandfather started with jerseys, and we just continued on.
Okay, well, it sounds like jerseys have always been a constant for you guys then, but I'm assuming your farm has changed over the years, specifically your dairy facilities. Would you be able to speak to that for a little bit?
2001, we broke ground putting in our new dairy facility. 2003, we came out of a 90-cow tie stall, moved into a bed pack barn with a double 8 herringbone parlor. Started out in bed pack, quickly realized it took too much bedding. Wasn't very profitable, spending way too much on bedding, so we went with free stalls. Years later, when we hit college, we learned that the gypsum we were using in our bed pack was killing the pH, and that's why it didn't work to begin with. So when you don't do your homework, that's what happens. In 2021, we expanded our parlor to a double 12 now, because we were taking too long to milk. So when we dug the parlor in 2003, we made room for a double 12, but only put a double 8 in to save money. So when we expanded in 2020, we finished building the parlor to a double 12 to make ourselves more efficient. And in the future, we're considering adding a robotic milking system to help aid even more in our efficiency and help us spend more time working on our other enterprises to keep the overall farm profitable.
Great. So speaking of your other enterprises, what made you decide to diversify, and what came first, the orchards or the winery?
We have always been diversified. We started with the dairy and orchards. From there, we got into the roadside market business. We used to have a route, huckster route is what we was called years ago, and we built a roadside market in the early 70s, and primarily it was fruit and vegetables that we grew on the farm. And over the years, we started to increase in size because we realized you needed to keep getting bigger in order to stay competitive. The winery came along in 2004.
So what made you decide to add the winery? I think this aspect is pretty unique because I think a lot of dairy farms think about just maybe processing their own milk or things that they already have available on the farm or getting into another livestock species. So what really made you decide to go that route with the winery?
Well, my grandfather was really into wine. It was something he was passionate about. So when he was thinking about retiring, he started making wine, and we became old enough to start taking over some of the field work. So he had the time to set it up and start making wine. It really brought us out of the commodity market into more of a specialized market. Wine is a very highly specialized product. It's a stylistic production system. You can go to any winery, try a Chardonnay from all of them, and you'll never have the same Chardonnay. It's really up to the independent winemaker and the overall flavor of their winery. On the commodity market, everything's traded pretty much at the same price. Everybody goes up and down. In the specialty market, you get to set your own price, and you really have to get into marketing and building your brand. And it's just a totally different market than any commodity you might produce. We didn't expect it to carry on, but when we saw that it was a profitable business, I came home from college and I actually started dabbling around in hard cider because we've always had sweet cider and roadside market, and I figured, well, I could ferment this and try to make another product to add to our lineup. It took me 3 years to develop. A lot of friends saying, here, try this, and they say, well, keep working. So it took me about 3 years because I only had time to work on it in the winter. Summertime, we're usually out making hay and planting and everything else, so it took me a while, and we do have a decent product on the market.
One thing I liked about the winery addition to the roadside market is that when you're selling produce, you're dealing with local people. They don't travel too far. But since we added wine, people travel miles to come taste your product. We have people coming off the interstate. They're traveling from Canada to Florida for the winter, and they see you have a winery, they stop in, taste some wine before they hit the road. Some people, it's just a weekend activity to jump in the car and go visit a different winery. So we've greatly increased our traffic coming through the door. One reason why we're not in the business of processing milk is because we're in an out of the way location. We don't have a lot of traffic on our road, so we decided processing our own milk was not a good option.
Also, with the dairy processing, we ship to Gears Dairy, which is a small local processor, and so we get a pretty decent price for our milk as it is. If we went to processing milk, we would be competing with who we're selling to with directly anyway, so it really didn't make a whole lot of sense there.
Okay, so you guys brought up a couple good different points. One being that when you're considering adding another business or enterprise, that it may take you some time and some trial and error. And the other one, considering what's already available to you. And I want to dig into those maybe a little bit later, but I also want to talk about your farm transition. Like I mentioned in the beginning of our podcast, that we were going to cover how you transitioned through the different generations. When did you really start that process of transitioning the farm from one generation to the next, and what are some things you had to consider on that end of things?
We've constantly been transitioning from one generation to the next. When my grandparents and parents started the corporation, that was in 1965, they had the bylaws drawn up. We needed to have a plan to carry the business forward, and that continues today. My brother and I transferred into the business probably mid to late 80s after we got out of college, and from there's a whole bunch of legal ramifications involved with a corporation. You have spouses involved. If something would happen to one of the shareholders, then, the spouse needs to be taken care of. We have a cross-purchase agreement to keep the ownership within the family. So there's a lot of things that you need to be aware of and keep track of and keep planning for. Within the last 2 years, we've worked with a business consultant to bring the next generation on board, my 2 sons and daughter, and that in itself is, dealing with attorneys and business planners to get everything right, just so you have a plan to carry on.
Great. And that actually leads into my next question that I was going to ask you. Did you seek any external help or support? So you mentioned a business planner and some legal support. Is there anything else that you guys would want to talk about or mention with external help, either the farm transition or diversification with your different businesses as far as the cows versus the winery? Do you guys want to add on to that?
Yeah, so we had worked with, as far as the transition goes, we worked with lawyers on that end of the things. And then we'd also recently worked with financial consultant through a grant that was for future business decisions. One of the things that we're looking at doing is expanding the herd a little bit and adding robotic milking to the herd to help reduce labor. And so we had a financial consultant run the numbers for us and help make sure that it's a good decision and makes sense financially. And so to have them come in and run the numbers and have a professional say that yes, this will work and this will make sense long term has been a big help in decision making.
Okay. What about when, learning about some of the different things that you're doing as far as making wine or improving cow comfort or improving your milking facilities? Is there anything, maybe some outside courses that you did or conferences that you made sure to attend, anything like that?
So there's a lot of free information out there already. We read a lot of periodicals, all your general farming periodicals. There's a wine conference that we can attend once a year. Penn State Extension is a good resource. And then a lot of our consultants, our feed consultants, crop guys will have open houses during the winter where you can go visit free seminars and get a lot of information out of them if you really want to. The industry as a whole usually does work together.
That's great. There's certainly a lot of information out there available to our producers. What are some of the biggest challenges you have faced with your business or anything that you would do differently?
We've evolved as a business. The markets are always changing. You always got to be on top of it. What worked back in the 80s does not work today. We used to be in the wholesale apple business. We used to sell wholesale grapes. We're out of all of that. At one point, you were able to get labor crews, and now that has even dried up. So it's managing your time over about how much work you can get done, really focusing on what you want to exceed in. So now we focus on what we can sell at the store.
So you guys have talked about shortage of labor and a bit about efficiency. How do you guys split it up between you and your different partners on the farm, all the different tasks that you have to complete?
So far, it's really come down to what your interests are. Kyle prefers working with the equipment, and Chad prefers working with calves and in with the vegetables. And for some reason, I just like working with cows and orchards. But when it comes down to the busy time of year when we're harvesting, it's all hands on deck. Everybody has to pitch in and help. If we can, we hire local help. It's great to find retired people that want a little something to do. Most of our work is seasonal in the orchards and vineyard for harvesting. Over the summer, we rely on high school and college students to help pick fruit. We have strawberries, raspberries, and cherries. The students do a lot of the picking, and peaches and apples are more or less ripening when everybody's going back to school. And we're not that big that we have to rely on outside help. The family can help provide the labor that we need to get the job done, which is one of the reasons why we no longer are in the wholesaling business. We try to grow just what we can sell through the roadside market.
One of the major advantages with having so many family members on the farm, we were diversified, which brings in the extra income to have us here. And since we're all here, it allows us to run our own chopping crew. I know custom choppers have become popular, but when you do your own chopping, alfalfa really becomes profitable. So, and having enough people to run disc bind merger, 2 wagon runners, and a chopper, it really amplifies your bottom line.
Do you have any take-home messages or advice for our audience if they were looking at either farm transition or diversification?
I guess some good advice would be to start small, try things out a little bit, find stuff that you're interested in. Look for areas where you can utilize your existing assets. So, for instance, when we started the winery, we planted the vineyards there. We had the orchard, and so we had the sprayer, the mower, narrow profile tractors. So, we pretty much got into the vineyard business without having to buy any more equipment to get started into that. So that worked out well for us. Some other advice would be to think about when your busy seasons are. So that's one of the challenges that we have is when, apples and grapes are ready to be harvested about the same time as your corn silage and manure spreading and planting your cereal grains and all that at the same time. That makes a hectic season.
So just be aware when you go to sell a ready-to-consume product, you're going to have a lot of when you get into dairy, it's a lot of food regulation, and it's there for a reason. So be mindful of that and really study up. Pennsylvania liquor laws are not fun to deal with either. You might as well just call your lawyer then go into it. Because I was talking to a lawyer a while ago about it, and he said most of their work anymore is Pennsylvania liquor laws. It's possible to get through, but just know it's going to take some effort.
One thing I would like to add about diversification is make sure you have a market for what you want to get into. It's a good idea to know where you want to sell, and it also doesn't hurt to have a backup plan. One thing that always got me through was remember Murphy's Law. Whatever can go wrong probably will, so make sure you have a backup plan. The dairy herd is still our main enterprise. It's what we really need to keep going, keep focus on to make sure that is running in at peak efficiency, peak production. The fruit is kind of icing on the cake, the roadside market, just to help out when the dairy prices are low. And there's also years where you don't have a fruit crop. This year happens to be one of them. The strawberry crop was damaged from last year's drought and deer damage. Peaches, most of the peach crop was lost to the -12 below zero temperatures we had in January. So it's nice to have other sources of income to keep our cash flow going.
Okay, well, thank you, Kent, Kyle, and Chad, for taking the time to chat with us today, and thank you to all of our listeners. If you have any further questions regarding this topic, you can email me at kzm175@psu.edu, and don't forget to tune in next week when dairy educator Emily Fred will be speaking with the Painterland sisters on their yogurt business.